Samoan woman and activist, has granted her opportunities to perform and speak in places ranging from the White House during the Obama administration to the UN Conference on Climate Change in Paris, France. With numerous viral poetry videos garnering over millions of views collectively, Terisa's writing blends the personal, cultural, and political in a way that calls for healing, courage, justice, and the truth. Without further ado, Terisa. Check. Family, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you give it up for Corona and everyone who helps keep this lecture series together? Give it up for yourselves for being here tonight. What week are we in? 8 word. Whoa. Always I think something that my bio also didn't mention was that I'm also an alumni of Kresge Town Hall, class of 2010. So it's always really wonderful to come back, not just be on campus and be in community, but to remember why I'm still here, and remember that, for better or worse, Santa Cruz was the breeding ground for a lot of my growth, a hell of a lot of transformative moments for me as not just a speaker or a poet, but as a girl, as a person, as a queer person, as a first generation queer person, as a first generation queer person of color, the Bay, working class. All happened while I was trying to figure my shit out here on this campus. I lived at College 10 in House 6, which is now known as Angela Davis House. And 13 years ago, when I was 18 years old, in my dorm room, I wrote my first poem here, and hadn't stopped since. And so, grounding myself in that truth, there are also parts of this campus where I'm like, whoop, trauma lives there. I swear, I broke up with my ex, and like all these other stuff, right? I'm like, that's why I don't come back all the time. I'm just kidding. No, but something that's really special about Santa Cruz is that the folks who did hold me down and who did see me grow and did sit through all of my like sappy ass poetry in the beginning knew a part of me that not a lot of folks can say they knew, because I was really just trying to figure it out, right? Is it okay though if I ground tonight's space with a few poems? Is that cool? Yeah. Okay. Make some noise if you have ever heard spoken word poetry out loud. You know, raise your hand. And I was asking that as a way to model that those of us who have heard spoken word poetry out loud know that it's not a quiet endeavor. We're not in the library, you don't have to clap in your heart, you can clap out loud. And so much of the energy that I get, the energy that helps calm my nerves, that helps pump my imposter syndrome, that helps remind me that I'm worthy, is the energy that, and the love that I get, and the mana that I get from the community in this room. So all the energy you give me, I give it right back, and I'm like, okay, my people got me. Is that cool? Cool? Is that cool? Yeah. I'm just checking. As I share a few of my poems, we'll read Sister Terisa Siagatonu had once said when she was still here with us, we sweat and cry salt water so we know that the ocean is really in our blood. And I remember this first poem that I'm gonna share with you all. She was the first one to have read the first draft of this poem before I brought it with me to Paris for the United Nations Conference on Climate Change in 2015. And what was really striking about that conference, as beautiful and catchphrasy as it sounds, a lot of global leaders around the world coming together to talk, to theorize about climate change, yet so many people I met didn't know where the Pacific Islands were. If you open up any atlas and take a look at a map of the world, almost every single one of them slices the Pacific Ocean in half. To the human eye, most maps center all land masses on Earth, creating the illusion that water can handle the butchering and be pushed to the edges of the world. As if the Pacific Ocean isn't the largest body living today, beating the loudest heart, the reason why land has a pulse in the first place. The audacity one must have to create a visual so violent as to assume that nobody comes from water, so nobody will care what you do with it. And yet, people came from land, are still coming from land, and look what was done to them. When people ask me where I'm from, y'all, they don't believe me when I say water. So instead, I tell them that home is a machete, and I belong to places that don't belong to themselves anymore. Broken and butchered places that have made me a hyphen of a woman, a Samoan American that carries both blade and blood. California, stolen. Samoa, sliced in half, stolen. California, nestled on the western coast of the most powerful country on planet Samoa, an island so microscopic on a map, it's no wonder people doubt its existence. California, a state of emergency, a way of having the drought rid of all its water. Samoa, a state of emergency, a way of becoming a saltwater cemetery if the sea levels don't stop rising. So when people ask me where I'm from, what they want is to hear me speak of land. What they want is to know where I go once I leave here. The privilege of assuming that home is just the destination and not the panic, not the constant migration that the panic gives birth to. What is it like, y'all, to know that home is something that is waiting for you to return to it? What does it mean to belong to something that isn't sinking? What does it mean to belong to the very thing that is causing the flood? So many of us come from water. When you come from water, no one believes you. Colonization keeps laughing. Global warming is grinning, all at your grief. How you mourn the loss of a home that isn't even gone yet, that no one believes you're from. How everyone is beginning to hear more about your islands, but only in the context of vacations and honeymoons, football and military life, exotic women, exotic fruit, exotic beaches, but never asks about the rest of its body, water. The islands and the reason why they're sinking. No one visualizes the Pacific Islands as actually being there. You explain and clarify and fix their incorrect pronunciation and explain till they realize just how vast your ocean is, how microscopic your islands look in them, how easy it is to miss when looking on a map of the world, excuses people make for why they didn't see it before. If y'all still with me, let me say yes. Yes. Just want to get a pulse check. So some things I'll model for y'all. I forgot to do this, but I like doing this. So sometimes it's not always like assumed that folks can react and speak back to me physically, right? And so you can do things if you hear something you vibe with, or you hear something that you dig. You can do things like snap your fingers. Can I hear you snap your fingers real quick? Or you can pretend like you're taking a big bite out of something really yummy, and you go You say, You can be vocal. You can say things like, okay, sis. Okay, sis. Okay, sis. Go in, sis. Go in, sis. Fuck it up, sis. Fuck it up, sis. I gotta make sure y'all with me, okay? I remember I went out for is Kinetic Poetic Project still a thing on campus? Kinetic Poetic Project? KPP? Word. Cool. Well, there used to be a student org on campus that led the poetry slam team. Is there a poetry slam team still here? Word. Wow. No? Yes? We'll check in about it later. Anyways, when I was a student here, I went out for the team my second to last year, and I was on it, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I like poetry. But we had a robust history of having some really radicalized, politicized students on this team each year, and I had the fortune and the opportunity to be on Santa Cruz's team for the last 2 years I was here. And I'll tell you a little bit more about my poetry journey from there, but a lot of my work lives at the intersections of exactly who I am as a first generation, used to be working class, but moved up because of my master's degree, Indigenous, queer, Pacific Islander woman of color. And so a lot of my work focuses on an array of issues, but the poems that I specifically chose for tonight focuses on what y'all are talking about in your classes around sustainable living and narratives of hope or sustainable living, yeah? That's what we're talking about? Yes. Okay, I'm like, am I in the right class? I'm like, wrong set of poems, right? I don't know much about how to talk about climate change, y'all, but I do know a thing or two about water. I know that San Francisco, city of my birth, was running out of it. As in, the state of California is losing its memory of what lakes look like because not enough rain had fallen to replenish them. I know that my island Samoa is thriving off of the very thing that plans to kill it once the sea levels can't distinguish the difference between swimming and drowning. I know that my grandpa's house was spared by the tsunami back in 2009, but it took 200 others. How no one in my family ever dared to call that a blessing. I'm not always confident when it comes to talking about the impacts of fossil fuels or carbon footprints, but I do know a hell of a lot about poverty and the paradoxes of being poor. environments like mine, where black and brown bodies are riddled with despair, too worried about going broke to even worry about going green, losing their will to fight for foreclosure signs sprouting on the blocks like redwoods, worried about having a dollar stretch with dignity to even worry about anything else for themselves, and I can't blame them. According to a recent poll, most Americans know that the climate is changing, but they say that they're just not that worried about it right now. They say that it's too distant for them to care about it, too rich to care about it affecting them, too poor to prioritize caring about how it affects them. Climate change is not always something that I feel confident talking about, y'all, but I know what it's like to watch Mother Nature watch other mothers grieving in the street as a child's black body decomposes on hot gravel at the feet of police brutality in the face of an iPhone camera. Watch the rest of the world watch our extinction go viral. Another version of an inconvenient truth. Call this a debate if you want. Call this a left-wing liberal protest cry all you want, but this is what I know about climate change. I know the academics who take my community's pain and use it in a grant proposal without our permission. I know the reporters who take my community's grief and use it as a fear tactic. I know the price of greed and the people who have to pay for it a third world away. I know how to trace the puppet strings back to the corporations who hold the world's wealth in their back pockets while the rest of us spend our lives paying for the gun. I know what it's like to come from the most powerful country on the planet, forever pregnant off of its own power. There are those of us who want to talk about climate change, yet don't want to talk about how those who are affected the most can't prioritize it in the first place. Because prioritizing it would mean being forced to pull the layers back and also talk about the poverty, y'all. The racism, the injustice, the privilege, the hush money, the hit list that climate change is operating from, starting with the most vulnerable, the rounds it makes on Earth. Everyone is affected by climate change, yet some are affected first. Yet no one cares until it is affecting them. This is for those of us who may not have the language, but who still have a voice. This is for those of us who can't afford rent, but who also can't afford to wait. For those of us who are ready to act, even if it means doing it for someone on the other side of the world, in a place we didn't even know existed. There are those of us who are talking about climate change, and then there are those of us who are fighting it. This is for those of us who have always had to figure out a way to do both. You still with me, family? Yes. For those who came in late, hello, Talapalaba. My name is Terisa. I'm your speaker for tonight. I had also mentioned that I'm also UC Santa Cruz alum, class of 2010. I don't know if I mentioned I graduated with my degree in community studies. Is that still here? I asked that intentionally because I was the last class to graduate in that program with it in its entirety, before the pink slips, before they laid off the faculty, before everyone. Andrea's son has saved my life when I was here. Taking her class and having her as one of the few white allies amongst professors that really took time to get to know me and learn me and saw me and my people. And so I lament over what students aren't allowed to experience of that program in its entirety. But I know it also comes off the heels of y'all now having critical race ethics studies, right? Is that here? Okay. Like preserve the beliefs that we create, right, out of the sheer resilience of student power on this campus. So I know that made a hell of a difference when I was here. As I get into my talk, and as I may or may not share more of my poetry, a lot of my poetry is online. Shameless plug. Follow me on the Twitters and the Gram. It's on YouTube, right? And so that's not as important to me as what I want to share in regards to my community and why I'm here talking about poetry, right? But before I get into that, just some things to keep in mind. If folks are familiar with community agreements of sorts and your student spaces on campus, on and off campus, these are just 5 key ones for me as I'm guiding us in this session tonight. Feel free to take notes. I know there's a Q&A portion later, so maybe things come up for you that you want to talk about with me. But if you want to take a note about it as we're together, go ahead and do that. Try it on means, you know when you're like at a department store, you see something on the hanger and you're like, that looks cute. You put it on, you're like, it's not that cute on me. But you didn't know that until you tried it on, right? And so maybe there's information that's coming at you tonight that you're not sure how you feel about it. You're not sure how it'll sit with you. I encourage you to just try it on and see how it feels. You can take it right off tonight, okay? Yeah? Respect. I put this up here intentionally because sometimes we have this habit of equating respect with politeness, or equating respect with being nice, just like pardoning each other. That's not what I mean when I say respect. When you take the word respect and break it down per syllable, and many of us know that is a prefix word to do again. If you reheat your food, rewrite, replay, redo. Spec comes from the root word of what? Does anyone know? To see, yeah. It's the root word to see. So if you put that together, it literally actually means see again. And so what I mean by that is, I'm not asking us to just be polite and pardon each other's lived experiences and whole ass lives. I'm saying, please take a moment to really think about what it means to see each other again, and again, and again. I have mentees in this audience that I've known for a few years, and at no point in our relationship do I ever assume that I just know all of who they are. But I'll have to also look at them again and again and again. And I ask that you do that for me too. What that does, it helps build empathy and compassion and curiosity and inquiry. It helps lessen borders and boundaries around what triggers us. It helps us stay curious too, so respect. And then ask me any questions as we're going along. I also know myself as a performer, I talk really fast at times. I gotta manage that as I'm in it in real time. So if that's the case, if you want me to repeat something, or you're like, can you slow down? Or repeat that again, just let me know, okay? Last thing is just take care of yourself. Go to the bathroom when you gotta go to the bathroom, get food, get drinks, stand up, do what you gotta do, okay? Cool. We good? So one thing going into this session that felt really important to me was something that I learned from the late Terisa Siagatonu. So Terisa Siagatonu, the woman who said the quote that I read to you all in the beginning, she was probably one of the most iconic scholars, researchers, poets, essayists we have in Pacific Island studies in the world. And she died from her battle with cancer 2 years ago. And I had the honor of calling her a mentor of mine in my life. I'm a great admirer of her work, but who she was as a person and what she held down for the preservation of our culture and our people, and our language and our traditions was unparalleled. And so losing her was a big loss for all of Oceania, for all of the Pacific Islands. What she taught many of us to do is to treat the classroom like a canoe. Because for many of us who have grown up or maneuvered our way and surviving through Western American institutions of higher learning, these places are hella colonized. They don't actually afford us to bring our whole authentic selves into every threshold of a room, wherever we are on any campus. Is that the case with can any folks resonate with that at all? I know when I was here, I never described it as me successfully graduating from Santa Cruz. I literally survived this place by the skin of my fucking teeth. Because there were so many times in which all of you just couldn't come into a room. A lot of times I relegated myself to the back of the classroom. I felt really incompetent all the time. I felt like my imposter syndrome was right, that my peers were smarter than me and whatnot. And I kept punking myself into believing that colonial narrative. Not remembering that all of who I am as an Indigenous woman and the Indigenous knowledge that came with me through my birthright just can't fit into this space. And so I didn't learn that until I graduated from this place. But what I'm saying right now is that even the Indigenous knowledge that I get to gift you with tonight will also not fit in this space. And so what does it mean to have to ease your boundaries, or ease your expectations, I'd say, around expecting there to be a destination of a product I'm giving you, rather than the journey that we're taking together in the water of this canoe of the classroom. Does that make sense? Yeah? So it's the difference between Indigenous knowledge emphasizing exploration versus discovery. Curiosity, cultivation, and possibility versus conquest, ownership. What does she want? How do I get my grade? I'm a part of this. That the water, the journey of this experience together says I'm a part of this rather than I own this, rather than I am a master of this subject. That is what American westernized education has taught many of us, myself included. But I have to struggle very hard to remember, to retain my roots of, oh no, I come from a language or dialect that could translate the fact that I'm boundless when it comes to that. So that also means that there's a humility to Indigenous knowledge. So there's humility to the Indigenous knowledge I know I came with tonight. That also says that the Pacific Islands, the Pacific Ocean as a region, is the oldest body of water we have. And it holds 20% of the world's languages. and it holds about 1,200 different cultural groups amongst 7 billion people in the world. And so I don't have all the answers, but I have what I know. And I did some really deep research in the years I spent, not just studying this, but being this. There's a power in using your own story, your own self-narrative as the curriculum. How many folks have ever participated in any program through engaging education here on campus? When I was a student here at UC Santa Cruz, I was heavily involved with student of color outreach retention. And I remember something that engaging education offered as a center, as a student-initiated center here on campus, was a class that students could teach and take. And I remember teaching the class my second year, and then taking it my first year as well. And it really is this decolonial mindset of remembering, oh, okay, our narrative, who we are, is just as valid of a curriculum as any textbook you get, any expensive-ass textbook you gotta get from the mainstream bookstore or online. And that just because someone doesn't validate it for you doesn't mean that it's not valid. Yeah? Okay. You still with me? Yeah. So I ground that all to say, welcome to the canoe. We are all in the canoe. We are all on this journey together. We're probably going to travel on uncharted waters together. There might be questions and things and curiosities that come up, and then we'll explore it and have a conversation and dialogue about it in present time, okay? But to start off with a little bit more grounding, we got to actually know what the Pacific Islands are. So really quickly, just turn to your left or right and just partner. You don't even have to move, but partner up real quick because we're going to do a really quick 30-second activity. So make some eye contact, be like, is it okay? Anyone not got a partner? Yeah, start with introduction. If you don't know each other, you know. So are we supposed to So we got the beach, we got the if you got yourself a partner, let me hear you say yeah. Yeah. If you got yourself a partner, let me hear you say word. Does anyone not have a partner? And we'll hook you up. Okay. Alright. So here's your 30-second task. It's a race. Actually, it's not a race, but a 30-second activity, okay? In 30 seconds with your partner, I want you to do two things. I want you to, one, decide between yourselves what the 3 sub-regions of the Pacific Islands are. There's 3 of them. And then I want you to maybe in your phone or together name as many Pacific Islands as you can. I'll give you roughly 30 seconds, maybe a little longer. But that's your task. 3 sub-regions of the Pacific Islands. Maui. It's on this map, you can read it. And then as many Pacific Islands as you can name. All right, and go. High five. How many people were partnered with people they didn't know? Give you free land. Okay. What it's like. All right, y'all. Before I reveal some of the answers, I'll start out with the first one. So, did anyone come to an agreement on what the 3 subdivisions were? Or can you name at least one of them? We'll do it together. So, what's at least one of them?
Oceania.
Close. We'll get back to that one. We want to put a pin in that one. Others?
Polynesia.
Polynesia is one of them.
Micronesia.
Micronesia is one of them. Melanesia, the other one. Okay? That's the 3. First of all, 3 regions: Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. Okay? So typically, which one do you usually hear the most, whether in the media? Polynesia. They, whenever referring to Pacific Islanders, and I say they as in people in the world, tend to relegate every Pacific Islander as being Polynesian. But that's not true at all. Not only did we used to have thousands of islands within the Pacific Islands region, only about 30 of them are inhabited by human life. And a lot of them were actually destroyed because of climate change, because of high sea level rises. But Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia all have very strong distinctions as to why they are coupled as the island conglomerates that they are. But if we're being really honest, that name, Polynesia, Micronesia, and Melanesia, was given to us by a French colonizer, right? We never named ourselves that. That's why it's pronounced Oceania, and I'll show you in a minute what it looks like in spelling, Oceania. A lot of us have reclaimed ourselves as that instead because we know the name of our colonizer and we say, we reject that. Because the dichotomy in terms of why it's important to really center who we are in an appropriate name is because for many cases, our names and our language is literally all we have to what our power stems from. So our family names, the villages we come from, and how we identify, how we self-identify, whether or not we buy into the colonial name given to us, or we reclaim the one that we've always been. So I made this table to just show you a bit of a distinction between what Pacific Islands were made to be and what Oceania knows themselves to be. This study is from another pioneer in Pacific Island studies named Efeli Haupa. He also is an elder of ours who has passed away. And he has probably written the most visionary piece to emerge out of Pacific Island from the sea, for people who are at home with the sea and not just in it. Rather than there being distinctions made to explain our identity to the world, because that's actually what Polynesia, Melanesia, and Micronesia helped to organize, was for business and trade and military to identify us easily. We reclaimed it and said, no, we use Oceania to remember our identities for ourselves. So some of the islands, maybe you and your partner discussed, most of the ones inhabited by people are seen alongside the left and right column. That is just me on Twitter going on a rant again about our colonization. And that is the name of our colonizer who named us the Polynesia, Melanesia, and Micronesia. It's also important, the syntax of it and the epistemology of it, because that's literally what each of the name means. It was Polynesia because there were many of us, Melanesia because of the dark skin of the people inhabited in those areas, Micronesia because they were small islands. That's really fucking it. It's pretty fucked up. And so, know the name of your colonizers. Any questions so far? Anything come up for folks when you were brainstorming islands? Because some of the major ones that only come up usually are Hawaii, Fiji. Any other islands come up that maybe you didn't expect to know, but you did and you were with part of? Yeah.
What about the East Pacific?
Like East Pacific?
Like close to South America.
Oh, like Easter Island? Rapa Nui. So that's part of, yeah, Rapa Nui is part of the Pacific Islands or Oceania, and is also colonized by Chile. So our colonization isn't just a U.S. imperialist one. We also have been colonized by Britain. We also was colonized by New Zealand for a minute, which was awkward. Yeah, French. Hello, loves us. They named themselves French Polynesia. And so, yeah, just trip off of what it means to have a region of the world that inhabits 30 inhabitable countries. Let's call them countries because that's what they are, nations. And I throw Hawaii in there too because Hawaii was stolen by the US. And I always consider that place a country. No matter how many times you vacation there, that shit is a country that was stolen. Okay, the queen had a choice that they put a gun to her head and they said, it's either your land or your people. So which one is it going to be? She had to give up her land because she wasn't going to sacrifice her people. Whew. Any questions? This is emotional for many reasons. And it's never one of those things where, oh, I'm just a crier because I'm a Pisces with a Libra rising. No, right? It's because this is more than just research for me. This is home. And so much of home is the reality that those of us from Oceania are at the front lines of this climate crisis that we're in, but are the least responsible for it. So just sit with that as we're together, okay? So as I'm summarizing this part of it, to a large degree, even despite our colonization, our imperialism, despite having to assimilate to different cultures, we know who we are. We as Oceania people, are pretty strong rooted in our traditions and culture, right? But there's also a perception of who the world thinks we are. And it typically looks like this, right? Where the world's view of us is very caricature-y, it's very entertainment-based, that our value just comes from what we give others through our dance, our music, our bodies, our beautiful brown skin, our luscious beaches, our athleticism, right? Can anyone think of a different worldview outside of this when you think of Oceania to a large degree as a society? I know there are other ones, but these are primary ones that come up. Particularly tourism, athletes, the rock, more, right? And like Elder Efeli Haupa reminded us, our ocean is vast. How can we at all be limited to just these stereotypes when we come from the biggest body of water there is, right? Our relationship with the land and sea were harmonious at one point, but due to so many foreign invasions, this is what actually has been the cornerstone for the colonization and the devastation of our islands that has led to the climate crisis that the Pacific Islands of Oceania currently suffers from. It's colonization, it's imperialism, militarization, climate change is in the heart of that for a reason. Missionaries, assimilation, health issues. To the point where climate change remains the single greatest threat to the livelihood, security, and well-being of the people of the Pacific, right? And so, to talk about climate change, what I've noticed in the discourse that I've engaged in social media, when I'm on the road, performing and whatnot, what I write about, the entry points for the conversation around climate change is common around things like everyday things that you do that are actually really necessary. Going zero waste, composting, recycling, things like that. Being more mindful, which I think if we do that on a large scale altogether, it can make some really big moves. Something that we don't do often, and the entry point in which we don't go into often is actually, in my opinion, is the US military. And I say that as someone who comes from a people who is currently a US territory. American Samoa is a US territory. The literal fucking name has American in it. We did not give ourselves that name. And I always find it important to really break down the insidious nature of US imperialism and why we don't interrogate it or indict it enough. And I speak from a point of personal narrative and just what I know from the research that I continue to do that informs not just my writing, but my activism and my organizing with my people, right? And so if you didn't know, at the turn of the century, 1900s, the US started divvying up all of the land that they received at the end of the Spanish-American War. And they started, at the time, the Samoan Islands was one country. In the poem I performed for you at the beginning, I alluded to the fact that it's now sliced in half, because it is. Now Samoa exists as two countries thanks to Germany that colonized the western half of Samoa, and America that colonized the eastern half and renamed it American Samoa. A few decades went by, and in 1962, Germany relinquished control in Western Samoa, gained its independence from them, and renamed themselves just Samoa, just the independent state of Samoa, whereas American Samoa remains a US territory today. And so, how many folks can name other US territories that we know exist in the world? There's like about 4 or 5 other ones. Puerto Rico is definitely one, that's like a cousin. Yep. Guam, yep. Then there's the Mariana Islands, also in Oceania, as well as the US Virgin Islands. What the fuck kind of name is that, right? Okay, so out of all of the territories though, American Samoa remains the only one that's unincorporated. Do folks know what it means to be unincorporated? And why? Why would American Samoa, of all the other islands, be the only one that's still unincorporated? What is one thing that folks may know about an unincorporated territory? Yeah?
Sorry, I'm just,
Oh, okay. Do your thing. Take yours. Okay. Anyone else? What does it sound like? Like, if I'm unincorporated, that means I must. There's no, okay, yes. So part of it is that if you don't have at least one parent that was born in the US, then you're not a US citizen. So, but here's where it gets tricky. So, say you don't have a parent that was a US citizen, so you're not a US citizen if you're from American Samoa, which means you can't vote for president, you can't vote in any formal elections, you can't hold certain government jobs, you can't apply for government assistance of any sort. But there are some things you can do. You can do things like enlist in the military. Not only can you enlist in the military, out of the 885 Army recruitment stations in the world, American Samoa is ranked #1 for enlisting the most people. Trip off of that. Make that make sense for y'all, real quick. Because the reason why unincorporated is so significant is because what it literally means is that there are a lot of parameters in which the US military can and can't do what they do around the world. Foreign affairs, like if they go to another country and try to do the shit that they do over there, they're gonna be like, that's illegal, you can't do that. They're like, oh, you're right, we're gonna go back home. The places in which they have the freest reign to train, nuclear test, do all their things is on unincorporated territories. It's why the devastation, the destabilization of Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, U.S. Virgin Islands, Mariana Islands, are such strategic hotspots for militarization in the waters. Is because they were a place for trade, they were the perfect harbor for trade with Asia and whatnot. And American Samoa still exists as that one spot, that one sweet spot for the U.S. military to literally, they just actually this year built a training, a shooting range behind a high school in American Samoa for soldiers to practice, target practice, right? And so when you have free reign like that, who indicts you? Who are you held accountable to, right? So hold that in your heart and minds, the way I've held that in my body all my life, okay? Hold that just for a minute, just for this session, okay? Other effects of militarization. So like I touched upon the enlistment, right? American Samoa has the highest enlistment of U.S. Army. So there's the Marines, Navy's, Army, Air Force. Army, highest in the American Samoa. Residents on the island of Guam, or I named it, the indigenous name is Guahan, serves in the U.S. military at rates 3 times higher than any U.S. state. How does that fucking make sense? This small island, this small indigenous nation in the middle of the Pacific, how can they have the highest rate of enlistment? One thing that is such a dark part of our U.S. history is nuclear testing. And not only were we fucked up in places like Japan, actually the biggest bomb we ever dropped was on the Marshall Islands in the Pacific Islands. Not only did we drop 67 bombs within a 10-year span, we dropped the biggest one on the Marshall Islands in 1954. It was called the Bravo test. And it hit a place called the Bikini Atoll. It hit them so much that it displaced all of the residents of that island to the point where they're now considered climate change refugees. They've all moved to the main Marshall Islands, in which now there's such an overpopulation that the president of the Marshall Islands is putting out a world call to get our shit together because they're not only losing their land to high sea levels, they don't have enough land for their own people because of the devastation we caused nuclear testing and radioactive debris. It gets worse. There has been a report that was just released this week that says, so when the U.S. did all their nuclear testing within that short span of time in the Marshall Islands, instead of cleaning up our shit, like we never do, instead of doing that, we swept it all into a crater that we created on the island, and we capped it with a cement dome, okay? The report just released last week that said the dome is cracking right now, okay? And this hits hard because, you know, I talk about the vastness of Oceania, but the smallness of our island body of a region is also small, but it's mighty, to the point where the reason why the Marshall Islands hits me so personally is because the daughter of the president of the Marshall Islands is a good friend of mine. She's also a poet. That my friend's mom is the president of this little island nation that's trying to save her people because of the destruction that we dumped them on. And the fucked up thing about it is that the Marshall Islands, and the U.S. made the Marshall Islands sign an agreement with them that actually just absolved the U.S. of taking care of the radioactive debris on their islands. So now they're saying, it's actually your guys' job to figure out what to do with it. Sorry, oops, we did all that testing, but because of this agreement you signed, you're not in charge of it. How do you do that to a whole ass body of people in such a heinous way, right? The U.S. military have overwhelmed the desires and rights of our people. It is so hard to write poems about home, but also need to nuance it to write about our colonization and be scared to perform them in front of my people, because I don't encounter a lot of opportunities in which our people are settled enough with being able to have conversations about colonization because of our deeply rooted allegiance to U.S. foreign aid and to U.S. militarization. That is so deep for us, it's so insidious, that we are so, as a country, grateful for our colonization while also suffering from it. And so I sit a lot with, when I hear reports of the New Green Deal that AOC puts out that I support in theory, I'm like, you gotta talk about the military, y'all. You gotta talk about how heinous it is to use that level of violence and weaponry and death and brutalization and link that back to why our environmental justice work is so goddamn hard on a smaller scale. We can't really actually recycle our way out of this. We actually have to take bigger swings. And it's scary to feel like you're in the minority of that opinion. It's scary to go up against the United States of America, who loves their country, who loves their patriotism, and try to put a mirror up to them and be like, this is where the actual interrogation should be. like to just share a video that actually includes some of our friends and some peers of ours that actually breaks down even further who the Pacific Islanders are and who Oceania is.
There's some people who have never heard of the island of Samoa ever. I would give up personally. I would say, dude, have you heard of Hawaii? It's near there. In reality, it's not near there at all.
Many people think we're just passive people. They often mistake it with being lazy.
Lazy.
Hawaiians being lazy.
And then when I tell them, oh, I'm from Guam. You're from Guam? Where's Guam?
I would tell people that I'm Tongan. They would be like, so is that like Hawaiian? Is that like the hula dances and the luau's? And oftentimes I would just have to settle and say that well, that's close enough.
I think when you say Pacific Islanders, the first thing that comes to most people's minds are big sports stars or big athletes.
We're actually pigeonholed into the athletic category, but I was never one to be really into sports.
I've never played sports, and when I tell them that, they insist that I should play sports because that's going to be a waste of height, and it's in my genes.
I've been called flying Hawaiian, or I'll be asked do the haka, which is not really a Samoan thing.
They insist they know more about myself than I actually do know about myself.
Hawaii was illegally annexed to the United States. A bunch of American businessmen wanted to have access to the land, and they got the support of the U.S. Navy, and they basically told the Queen, you can let us have rights to your land, or we can fire on you and destroy you.
We are citizens of the United States. Although people back on the islands don't get to vote for president, there's a small group of citizens in the United States that don't actually have presidential voting rights.
And I distinctly remember asking my professor, the first day of school, did the syllabus, and it was the upper division course of the last part of your Asian American Studies class, and I asked him, are you ever going to learn about Pacific Islanders? And he was like, well, unfortunately there isn't a professor who can talk about Pacific Islanders. We won't be able to highlight that. And I was just really upset. And I remember just feeling like, I'm going to self-teach myself if I have to. I'm going to look at schools that have Pacific Islander studies and teach myself about myself, and that's like the one hardest thing I have to do.
Growing up, seeing things on TV, Hawaiians weren't really portrayed in such a positive way.
And then when they think of Islanders, they always think of like hula dancers or Lilo and Stitch type characters.
Tikis and hula dancing, the wrong kind of hula dancing.
It's tough growing up as a Pacific Islander, maybe feeling that you don't fit into those things that are presented in mainstream media.
The roles I would go out for would be like accented English, foreign exchange student, Harajuku girl, or like a prostitute.
What are some strong values within your cultures?
Oh yes, family is number one.
We always look after one another.
Sometimes I feel like nothing else matters in the world. All that matters is if we have each other.
All my cousins, we all consider each other brothers and sisters. And even if people call us like, hey, that's your cousin, like, nah, that's my brother.
We always want to feed everybody.
A lot of humility is rooted in being Pacific Islander in general.
Stories are so important, and we would hear from my grandparents and their generation all the stories from when they were growing up. And especially for people from the Mariana Islands, stories typically involve war and the impact that World War II had on the islands and on our grandparents' generation as they were growing up. My grandmother, when she was 16 years old, was put into a camp. She found out that she was going to be killed, and she fled with her siblings all down to age 2 into a cave where she lived for 18 months. She collected coconuts for water, and she told us how you could make clothing out of coconuts, how you could literally survive off of a coconut.
I actually myself took like a touristy like canoe paddling trip with my dad where we paddled canoe for a couple hours with this guy who was a guy. He was saying, you know, the native population was wiped out, was just decimated by Captain Cook and like British and American sailors because Hawaiians were not immune to those diseases. Because of that and because of our dwindling numbers, like the Hawaiian race is going to disappear. I just felt such sadness and loss that like our people and our culture will disappear. I got making me emotional just thinking about it.
It's very sad. It's very sad when you know that your people are going to fade into time and history.
Take into account that we are real people, we're tangible, we're not your island destination for a getaway.
We have a culture that is different from many others around the world, and we have kind of our unique place in the middle of the Pacific.
Hawaii is really special. The land is alive, it is old, it's really powerful. it's just very special knowing that you have a connection to that.
If you don't know, ask. Don't just assume.
More people are here. We're a small group, but we are absolutely here.
Especially for Pacific Islander people. It's okay to struggle. They'll struggle, especially as minorities within a minority. You just have to push through.
Any questions, ma'am? I just want to pulse check, take a breather for a second. What's coming up for folks? Being a first generation student meant no one in my family helped me get into college. I barely made it here. And figuring that out was an ordeal of sorts. I grew up in a really strong, rich home. Really strong, rich, yet at sometimes rigid Samoan culture. Very intergenerational household, very multiracial household, where family, religion, and culture were definitely the three pillars in which I existed upon and I balanced upon. The problem was that I had struggles with all of them. With being queer, with being self-expressive and opinionated, with having questions about my culture, and it never ever sat well with all the elders in my family. I tried to figure it out, because what it kept boiling down to was this narrative being told to me of, am I a good enough Samoan daughter? Am I Samoan at all if I struggle with all these three parts of me? Then I came here. That was for my graduation from College 10, and my graduation from my master's. And the first generation struggle was really real. I had to really figure out how to really combat my imposter syndrome this whole time. From moving from an inner city like San Francisco to like the river forest was really hard. And it wasn't until I got involved with student activism where I really found a sense of community. Because I also almost transferred out of Santa Cruz at the end of my first year, because I just wasn't really finding it as a place to feel safe and feel like I could be my whole self. But luckily I did. And thank God I did, because my time here was really valuable, in which education became less about the product and the destination, and more about this healing and this medicine that I was getting with the classes that I deliberately wanted to take, because I was using it as a way to study myself and culture. And then through that came poetry. The student activism in my time, just to give you a little bit of a scope, the biggest things going on campus was the average retention rates of students of color, as well as us fighting to retain a match that the chancellor gave engaging education at the time that we were about to lose. So when I was the co-director of East-Square, we had to run a campaign to really secure that match. Also, I was a junior when 2008 happened, and the 32% increase in our tuition went up. And what it catalyzed was the students of color on campus creating something called the Students of Color Collective, which then resorted to us leading a campus-wide hunger strike at the base of campus. Because it got to that point in which we exhausted all options, and the vice chancellor of student affairs wasn't listening to us, Blumenthal wasn't listening to us, and so we organized a week-long hunger strike. And a lot of demands were met in that way, because that's what we know strikes and protests to do. That it's not just, because we think it's fun. We use them as last resorts for those of us in this room and who are strategic in those ways. The other things that mattered to me was that I was literally one of the only Pacific Islanders on campus that was actively involved in student organizing. It was really lonely and isolating. And so trying to find my sense of community amongst the students of color was also important to me, right? Whether through my queerness, through my admiration for wanting to get involved in labor rights with the workers on this campus, as well as, like I mentioned, the fight for community studies happening. I was on my way out of Santa Cruz. And because I felt so passionate about all these issues, I started writing about all of them. And I haven't actually stopped. It went from really sitting with the idea that what I'm writing about matters because it matters to me, even if it doesn't matter to anyone else. And poetry, and finding it here at UC Santa Cruz was what helped me do that the most. It went from writing poems and going to open mics on campus, and going to open mics to going to perform at rallies on campus, and then rallies to representing the UC Santa Cruz Science Team. And then UC Santa Cruz Science Team turned into my field study at Youth Speaks for my degree in community studies. That internship through that field study turned into a job. That job turned into coaching the youth slam team for the Bay Area, and so on and so forth. And so working as a full-time poet and speaker and teacher now has been a dream of sorts that has really helped me to really prioritize my activism in my ability to use poetry as a vehicle for social change. There are some risks that come with speaking up and using using public speaking as a vehicle and a tool. A lot of it has revolved around my culture in the beginning. My parents and my immediate family always wondered if I was saying too much, if these videos I was putting out was too personal. And it took time, it took years actually, because I did come out to my parents when I was a third year here in Santa Cruz, and it was the worst day of my life. I almost lost my family during that whole time. They didn't talk to me until graduation the following year. And so a lot was at stake with being able to use poetry to heal during that really painful time as well. Social media is always a risk. The more I put my work out, and the more I'm accessible to people, the more people think they have access to me, to anyone, right? Any of us who have public lives in those ways. So I'm always wary of that, especially as a female-bodied person. Harm is real. People get out of pocket all the time, especially with women of color, with queer women of color, femme-bodied people, like all kinds of fuckery, right? And then not only is harm real to me, it's also possible that I could cause harm to others. So I have to take accountability for what I say and the work I put out too. And yet, even with all those risks and all those consequences, what I realized in the 13 years I've been doing this family is that the cost of my silence was still too high of a price to pay. So I decided that I don't want to pay for it anymore. Or I try very hard to live a life where I proactively don't pay for it anymore. Whether it be through my physical notion that I'm telling you right now I'm not going to do that, or through the poetry I write, the workshops I lead, the activism I organize and I get involved in. That has helped me to stop paying for that cost. Because what I realized is, the thesis statement in my head whenever I'm on tour and performing and speaking is that we get better when we are allowed to tell our stories. We get better, our health improves when we are given a chance to self-express and create. And so it comes back to this notion that I entitled this talk on, this idea of building the global on it. That actually came from a discussion I had with, it wasn't even a discussion, I was kicking it with my homegirl. She asked me, I think we were high. She was like, have you ever built a boat while you're on it? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Let's just follow that idea for a minute, right? What I realized actually was, as an artist and as a community organizer, was hopelessly in love and devoted to the liberation of all of our people. It would be easier to give up on this movement work, since fighting for justice on any level leaves us with the question of, what does justice look like if we've never actually had it? And how will I know if I'm there? What if I don't get there in this lifetime? So, the ocean reminds me, and it teaches me that this is the exact reason why it was important that this classroom tonight turned into the baka, or the canoe. That the ocean teaches me that the ocean is not, that the work is not the end goal or the product or the justice that we want. The work is in every step we take towards getting there. The work is in building the boat, even if we're not sure where it's headed. The work is in how we take care of our most vulnerable and most marginalized amongst us, and how those of us with privilege yield it in a way that supports our collective well-being. The work is in thinking you've completed the damn boat, but having to build one more level each time you encounter a new challenge, a new person, a new community, a new struggle that wasn't accounted for before. Building the boat while on it tests just what our faith and our determination and hope are made of. And I can't think of 3 things that we need more than those right now in a time like this. So much of what I know my work to be is, it's cool what I'm saying in poems, but what am I saying after the poem is done? Okay? So I show up for the work. That's not just that I'm commissioned to do poems about climate change, or I'm writing poems that just speak to my heart. I'm also showing up to the actual work in actual places. And so these are just a list of the more current projects that I have been involved in related to climate change and environmental justice. And it reminded me of something that Angela Davis said when she was in conversation with Dr. Ibram Kendi in San Francisco last fall, where she said, artists are beacons of hope for all of us. I think artists help us realize what it is we have not yet learned how to articulate. I recently, just 2 months ago, spent a month in both Brisbane, Australia, as well as Aotearoa. And Aotearoa is the Indigenous name of New Zealand. Side note, if a country is called New Zealand, they probably didn't give them that name. New Zealand is not a name, but it's called Aotearoa, okay? So when I was in Brisbane though, I had the honor of co-writing, co-creating, and co-starring in a theater poetic production entitled She Who Dies to Live. I also created that title. And that production starred me, Jocelyn Ng, and Kathy Jumbo-Kitchener. Kathy Jumbo-Kitchener is actually the Marshall Islands poet that I spoke of, whose mother is the president of the Marshall Islands. Three of us came together and created this theatrical performance to tell the narrative story of Pacific Island women in our cultures and in Oceania. And so we worked really hard to put that on for something called the 2019 Asia Pacific Triennial, and that went up. And we're currently shopping that show around to different festivals, slated to premiere in both Hawaii and maybe Guam next year. So that's one of the projects that I'm currently involved in. The other project that means a lot to me is something that I've been applying to grants called Nine Heavens, also just the brainchild of mine. Basically what it is this idea to have a 9-stop military-style tour of creative writing and performance workshops at the 9 cities that have the highest population of Samoans because of the military bases in those cities. So it started in Anchorage, Alaska, and in American Samoa. And I would lead them all. So the proposal is that I create the curriculum for the writing and performance workshops. The participants of the workshops are the Samoan community in each of these 9 cities. And we delve into the nuances and the complexities of our colonization, and we give them opportunities to write about it and reclaim their narrative and tell their own stories. And then each one of them would end in a performance for the community. Is the hope. Someone funny. Cool. As I wrap up this part of my presentation, I do want to let y'all know that how I'm actually going to end this is, at the very end of this, I'm going to open up the space and I'm going to give everyone in the room a quick writing prompt. And then I'm going to give everyone an opportunity to engage in a freestyle, cipher, / open mic. So think about what that means. It doesn't mean that everyone will perform. You will not be put on the spot to perform, but you will have the opportunity to perform or share a piece of something that you write a little later. Okay? The last thing I'll say about the bridge I'm trying to create between Oceania and the importance of telling one story. The reason why Oceania in poetry is teaching the world about hope is because the reimagination, it is the reimagination that justice requires. Okay? What I mean by that is, on the left side, you see the dominant narrative that we're continuously told. And then we see an alternative solution, an alternative universe in which maybe there's another direction we can go. So instead of the dominant narrative about Oceania always being, they're just islands in the faraway sea, our sustainable hope alternative could be, no, we're actually a sea of islands. Okay? Or the smallness that the world sees us as versus the vastness that we actually are. My silence will protect me is my dominant narrative every time I was a student here. But then I was like, no, my voice will actually set me free. My struggle is more important than my resilience. Not true. We are drowning, or are we fighting? Last but not least, my favorite. We can't indict the US military. Women can't lead. Art can't change things. Sustainable hope narrative being, let's try it and see what happens. Last March, we didn't try any of those yet. We still don't have faith that we can. I actually do. Okay? Last video I'm going to play is actually a really beautiful compilation of Pacific Islanders in Oceania, telling us themselves that they are not drowning, they are indeed fighting. They're fighting for all of us. from the Pacific Islands in Oceania, but I was born here. There's an immense amount of privilege that comes from not being here on island, fighting in the literal front lines on behalf of all of us, the way they are, right? But if one of the most vulnerable populations and regions of the world can look us in the face and say that they're not drowning, they're fighting, to me that's enough to get me up every morning and be like, yep, I can get off Instagram and get this work done, right? And I have way more resources, and I have way more connections, I have technology and things like that, and it's super humbling because it reminds me that the indigenous knowledge that once existed pre-technology, social media, whatnot, pre-violence, said that we actually were the ones who pioneered navigation, and we actually do know the way, and we can teach the world the way, right? So I'm grounded in that. I end humbly on that notion that what Oceania poetry has taught me about myself is that telling my story using my voice is actually my birthright. It's not just a hobby. I'm not just here to do poems. It's actually because it's part of my lineage and my mama. That my story, my voice is the only country a colonizer can't get his hands on. It's the only nation that cannot be defeated. Nothing has brought me closer to actualizing freedom and justice quite like writing has, y'all. Because when I write, I free everybody. Even if I have to imagine a whole ass world better than this one, I'll do it and I'll free us and I'll write in my writing. It literally gives me the fuel to do this time and time and time again. Art gives us the soul that we need to do this work. I truly believe that. Whether the art is dance, film, music, cooking, whatever the art be, it's literally what's giving us our soul to stay intact and do this work. And so I leave you with this to consider, that it's not simply a fight for a sustainable future. I do not have actionable items to give you to go help Oceania save the world. It is not just simply that fight. It's also addressing the conditions that make having a sustainable future difficult in the first place. Okay, you can't say you want a sustainable future if you can't locate Pacific Island right now. You can't say decolonize this land if we haven't intimately gained the respect from the native people of the land we claim we want to decolonize. You can't change the future if we have no interest in learning about each other's histories and past transgressions. Similar in poetry. That's not simply tell your story, speak up, use your voice. It's addressing the conditions that make silence, alienation, judgment, embarrassment, ridicule, ostracization possible in the first place. Never do I walk into a classroom and lead a writing workshop with students, especially with youth. Never do I ever walk in being like, the goal is to make everyone here a poet. That's not the expectation. If I could get everyone to at least say their name, it's already an accomplishment. That's the biggest victory I could come out of it with. But the goal is not to make everyone artists. The goal is to remind folks of the power of their voice, and whether they use it in my class or in another time, but at least they know that it's worth being used in this lifetime, is the goal. This is the last slide before the writing prompt, so this is just me warning you that we're about to get into the writing, okay? I wanted to read you, Brother Elia Hausbach said, as the last paragraph in his article, Our Sea Life. Oceania is vast. Oceania is expanding. Oceania is hospitable and generous. Oceania is humanity rising from the depths of brine and regions of fire deeper still. Oceania is us. We are the sea. We are the ocean. We must wake up to this ancient truth and together use it to overturn all hegemonic views that aim ultimately to confine us and physically and psychologically into the tiny spaces which we have resisted accepting as our sole appointed place, and from which we have recently liberated ourselves. We must not allow anyone to belittle us again and take away our freedom. Does everyone have a writing utensil?
I changed my mind about plastic waste when everybody agreed we had no more time to waste. Coddled up in a fury of selfish haste, we lost sight of how fresh salt water tastes. I dive into a sea that has been laced with the remnants of cheap-made perpetrates, and we relearned that thoughtless future was not the way to treat our earth for one more day. For at once we saw the possibility to undo the waste littering our lands and waters blue, and at once we changed our ways, held each other up with handmade goods made of clay.
Who else? What's your name? Give it
I changed my mind about capitalism. This is what I know. A world independent of monies and math is possible. A world of honor and reciprocity and respect and harmony. A world where a tree blossoms before it's due. A world where life takes its natural course, away from illusions, away from the days of hustles and empty chases, far from the exploitation of resources, the frying of minds, the vacuuming of souls. A world where the stars shine from the skies, to us, in us, through us. A world where the seconds succumb to the breaths, and the breaths do not yield to the relentlessness of time.
No, no. Close. Good name, Cam. Give it up for Emily.
I took this more in conversation with myself rather than starting it as a component. I don't think I have generalized anxiety or depression. I think what I suffer from most is the inevitable side effects of the colonial state on this body. The plague is capitalism, and the rat that bites us is the cholera. They say if you can't beat them, you should join them, but how does one join an organization whose aim is to commit genocide on 99% of the population? They want to kill you and me and our mother. How do we get the power back when the praises of our oppressors are coming from the mouths of our kin? Do they know they are trying? Do they know that we are dying of a preventable death? What gives me hope is the soil and the water, and I think it could be better than Zoloft and Prozac.
Give it up for Anne.
What if the social issue is this classroom? What if the social issue is every classroom that I walk into that doesn't know the barriers I hold, but when given education on it, sits in the comfort of their silence? Because that's easier than holding the heaviness and reality of what I know my bones were structured to keep. When asked from Terisa how folks are feeling, silence. Silence also tells me that who I am, what my people struggle for, shall continue to be fought and understood alone, because the silence feels better, because what it also does is relieves you of being held accountable to support the pain. I changed my mind about this classroom. What I know is, regardless of your silence, my mere existence in this seat is a fight that has already won. Because I sat in this chair that wasn't meant for me to thrive in. Because I looked in the faces of strangers who, whether they care or not, will remember me.
This is I'm going to use this example, and I feel very comfortable doing it because this is my sister. That's my other sister. You can me, girl, but you here. Say hi, Lexi. This is actually where I think the work is. This is us building the boat. This shit's fucking hard. The silence of the room sits differently for her than it does actually for me, and that's okay. But if we can't build the boat together here, how the fuck are we going to do it out there when it counts, right? And so it's okay to trip and fall, and it's okay to trial and error here. I remember I struggled with that in grad school, actually, when I was trying to become a therapist. We were all so scared. What if we get it wrong? What if we fuck up our clients? What if we make them more depressed? That's not possible. It's not even that. It's that naming it was was something that we weren't doing because we were so scared of accountability. And we were more scared of the possible harm that we may cause than the actual harm we were causing. And so I invite y'all, and I'm naming that, and I know I'm holding the room this way, and that's okay, because that's the educator in me, but I would rather y'all try it out here. Try your voice out here, see how it feels, then go to a place where it's less safe, less courageous, less likely to hear you, less likely to validate all of you, less likely to say about you, is what I'll leave that with. Okay? On that note, anyone else want to share? Oh, give it for Walter.
My poem is really short. I was just thinking about graduating next month and like something that's going to relate to like my journey. But it goes, education. I know that as a first-generation Tongan student, it's draining as fuck. To not have access to certain privileges that most other students are given at birth. To sit in class with my mind wrestling with thoughts about inadequacy. And going back to my family in the Bay Area every weekend just to feel comfortable in education.
Thank you, Mark. Last call or closeout. It matters more to me that you have a plan on what you choose to do with your story, your free write, your voice after this class than with me, and that's fine.